Remember that very famous and popular and successful movie called Jai Bhim? Well, this week we are going to be talking about the Bhim Party. That popular series actually talks about the journey of a lawyer who became a champion for the rights of the downtrodden and the backward people. This week on One Take, I'm Pallavi Ghosh and we are talking about the Chandrashekhar Azad Ravan factor, or the one who is a co-founder of the Bhim Party in Uttar Pradesh politics. Is it just going to be a flash in the pan, or will he be a game changer? Does he really matter? Let's cut to the figure of and the picture of two people who talk about Dalit votes in Uttar Pradesh. One, of course, is Mayawati, and the other one now is Chandrashekhar Azad. In many ways, both of their styles are very similar. Political observers say, whenever any leader emerges as a champion for the downtrodden, they have to have a particular demeanor. And that explains why Chandrashekhar Azad Ravan's style is very similar to that of Mayawati in her earlier days. Now, with Mayawati almost seemingly reaching a tactical retreat, has Azad now emerged as a champion of the Dalit rights in Uttar Pradesh, and thereby is he important player. Why is it that someone like a Mayawati would be very wary of him? And why is it that Akhilesh Yadav is thinking of an alliance with him? And why is it at one point of time even the Congress party was hobnobbing with Chandrashekhar Azad? Remember those famous pictures when he was hurt and hospitalized? Priyanka Gandhi Vadra had gone across to meet him. Well, the story of Chandrashekhar Azad is very similar to this character in Jai Bhim and also what it was Mayawati in earlier times. It was actually an idea which came into his mind when he saw what he called atrocities against the children or students of a college who were Dalits, and how they were forced to clean the classrooms. In fact, some of his co-students were not even allowed to drink water from a tap which was being used by the Rajputs in that university. They were made fun of, they were taunted, in some cases they were assaulted, and that's where Azad decided to take up the challenges on their behalf. Slowly, he decided to form a political party. In 2015 is when the genesis of this political party took place. And it's a very, I would say it's a very striking kind of a symbol or a flag which he adopted, very similar again to that of Mayawati, the blue color and a tinge of white in it. He said all along that I want to contest the elections because that's the only way there can be an empowerment of the Dalits unless there is not a political empowerment. He hobnobbed with many other politicians. There were many issues which he took up on. He travelled all the way from his base area of Uttar Pradesh like Shamli. Actually, he came over to a national capital, the famous Jantar Mantar spot not too far away from where I am at this point of time, and which is really the spot on which many agitations have taken place. The agitation against the CAA is when Azad was seen to be his fiercest and the most aggressive. Huge crowds, and not just from Uttar Pradesh. His flamboyant style, his very aggressive style of speaking, that came to have a very, very important role in the kind of following which emerged for himself. He was, of course, arrested, and they say the power of a politician often increases once you are behind bars. History is replete with such examples. Indira Gandhi, Jai Prakash Narayan, so on and so forth. And that, I think, added to the power and charisma of Chandrashekhar Azad. Since then, he has been speaking out against what he calls the upper class hegemony or authority and how they try to control the entire society. He also dared to take on the Prime Minister and contest opposite him in Banaras, but of course he withdrew his nomination at that point of time. But the fact that you are ready to take on a tough fight, I think set him aside from many of his contemporary politicians. This criticism, for example, often comes in of Congress leaders and even of Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, is that the best way you can show that you're ready to take on the mighty is to fight against them. In fact, Arvind Kejriwal, I would say, also goes down in history because he decided to contest from the Prime Minister's constituency in Banaras despite knowing that he would not be most probably winning from there. But the mark of a politician is also to take on these kind of high voltage risk, and that's exactly what Azad has done. But look at the reactions which came to him. Mayawati saw herself in him. That's what people close to her would often tell us. that whenever Mayawati would look at Azad, the way he would speak, the amount of crowd which would come, I know there was a lot of young crowd from Western Uttar Pradesh, other parts of the country as well, specifically from Bihar. She saw herself in him. She remembered her days when she actually took over the legacy of Kanchi Ram and decided to become the Dalit ka Masiha. Every time she would go out, she would talk about the fact that how I am being attacked, I am being targeted because the upper caste does not want me to grow up and become successful. Pretty much the same line which was taken by Azad. To be fair to Chandrashekhar Azad, he would never ever directly take on Mayawati because he also understood that politically speaking, this should perhaps not be would not be showing good political acumen. She's a Dalit ki beti. He projected himself as a Dalit ka beta, and therefore all of us really need to come in together.
आज मनुस्मृति और संविधान के बीच संघर्ष है और संविधान हमेशा भारी है और ये आप जानते हैं कि संविधान की ताकत की वजह से आज बाबा साहब का बेटा यहाँ बोल रहा है.
So he was never very openly critical of the style of Mayawati's politics. She, of course, was always very critical. She was condescending. She said he's a flash in the pan and he cannot really actually represent what Dalits are all about in UP. But other political parties did understand the worth of Azad. Now, I remember Priyanka Gandhi Vadra in one press conference after another would always rubbish Mayawati by saying she's just a B team of the BJP. Of course, she was making a reference to the fact that of late Mayawati has not been out and about. From not taking on the BJP very strongly to actually lying low, and as we said, almost going on a retreat, the impression which went out is that Mayawati is no longer in the game. And in Azad, she saw that potential. We all know that Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra want to project themselves as leaders who fight for the downtrodden. From Rohit Vemula's case, which Rahul Gandhi fought for very vociferously, and accusing the BJP of being anti-Dalit, and also tom-tomming the fact that they had chosen a Dalit as the Chief Minister from Punjab. In Azad, they saw a potential, which is why those pictures of Priyanka Gandhi Vadra by the bedside of Azad when he was hospitalized because he was injured and hurt in a police lathi charge actually shows why the Congress party understood the worth of Azad. But that was an alliance which never happened because there was a contradiction here, because the Congress party wanted to project itself as a champion of the Dalits. So therefore going piggyback on a man who was being seen as a Dalit champion or a Masiha would actually not fit into the political narrative of the Congress party. Well, let's cut to the present times. This entire talk of Akhilesh Yadav actually having an alliance with Azad. Why does it matter to Akhilesh Yadav? Remember, his alliance with Mayawati earlier did not really pay off. This whole perception or calculation that her Dalit vote bank would end up benefiting Akhilesh Yadav, and therefore the Yadav plus Muslim plus Dalit combination and a bit of the Brahmin vote bank which Mayawati was wooing would actually catapult both Mayawati as well as Akhilesh to power in Uttar Pradesh did not completely work out. In fact, the benefit of a Dalit vote bank did not rub off on Akhilesh Yadav. Therefore, Akhilesh decided that, Azad, because of his young image, because he has a kind of a connect with a younger Dalit population of Uttar Pradesh, would actually help his case, and therefore he was very keen on having this kind of an association with Azad. We are talking about times where there is some certain amount of flip-flop taking place. But one thing which Chandrashekhar Azad is very fixed on is, and this is where he's learning from Mayawati, is that if I really want to become a Dalit ka neta, I really need to contest elections. And I cannot be subservient to any political party, even if they are one of the major stakeholders, like for example the SP is. In almost a two-cornered fight between the BJP and the SP, other political parties matter, and Azad wants to make that point that I matter, and therefore I am not going to be happy or content with just a rip-off or kind of a small seat which Akhilesh Yadav is going to give to me. See, the growth of Azad will have to be almost on the lines of the growth of Mayawati. Mayawati was believed to have been a very tough nut to crack, someone who was very difficult to do business with and negotiate with. I remember the times of UPA 1 and UPA 2 when they actually needed the help of Mayawati. It was very difficult, and there used to be those late night meetings to decide how do we deal with Mayawati. Because I remember Ahmed Patel would tell us कि उनके साथ बातचीत और नेगोशिएशन करना बड़ा मुश्किल है. एक तो वो महिला है और दूसरी पार्टी वो मायावती है. I think Azad has also understood that. Azad has understood that I have to be tough. I cannot be seen as a small organization which is ready to take anything which is offered to me. And this is the time to negotiate. One thing which Mayawati also learnt is patience. Let me wait for some time. इतना भी desperate मत हो कि we are going to accept any doles which are coming in from the major political parties. I think Azad's thinking is also along the same lines. He also knows that he has one particular strong vote bank with him, the young. He is young, 1986 born. He still has time by his side, and he knows that he has many more years to come. If not in these assembly elections, in the Lok Sabha elections, he can build up his stature. Also, politicians should perhaps never ever be in a hurry. That's something which I've learned as a political reporter. Neither should a political reporter be ever in a hurry, nor should a politician ever be in a hurry. When you have time by your side, it's important to take those baby steps, but those baby steps really have to be firm. The flag, the blue flag of Chandrashekhar Azad is something which is very prominent in the political landscape. They may be fewer in comparison to the Lal Topis of the Samajwadi Party or the saffron flags of the BJP, but certainly seems to be more powerful than a few Congress flags which we get to see. And therefore, Azad, in a sense, can play an important role. To come back to the earlier question which I've been asking, is he going to be a flash in the pan? Well, time will tell us. You know, there have been many such players like him who have been actually very aggressive, who have gathered a lot of eyeballs, but they have actually not emerged as a big political player. That's one thing which politics teach you. That's one thing which may be a fact, that he may be just a flash in the pan. But for now, he is certainly one leader which many political parties are watching very closely. How much of the Dalit vote bank can he really capture? Are the Dalits still with Mayawati completely? Aren't the Dalits little wary of major political parties like the SP and the Congress party? Because some of them in private say, we know we are being used. So why not go with someone who's actually a Dalit ka beta, and in this case Chandrashekhar Azad? That can be a swing factor. How many votes can he swing in favor of those he decides to support? Will he officially join in on a pre-poll alliance or a post-poll alliance? Will he emerge as a kingmaker? Well, that remains to be seen. It all depends on how much of a vote he cuts, how many seats actually he gets, how many he manages to win. But his time has come. He still has plenty of time ahead, and a constantly fluid situation of Uttar Pradesh, if not in these assembly elections, because UP matters in Lok Sabha as well, Azad perhaps can play a very important factor. Also, politics in our country is changing. People are getting younger, more younger people are watching very closely. They do not want to go in for a time-tested model of politicians and political parties, and therefore newer players who come up often seem much more attractive. That is going to be an interesting part of Chandrashekhar Azad. And before I go by and wait for your reactions on the social media timeline, do you think he can be an important factor in the complex world of politics in Uttar Pradesh? Just a little footnote. I remember initially his Twitter handle did have Kanshi Ram as his DP. He knows he cannot go far away from the legacy of Kanshi Ram, and at some point of time he would have to replace Mayawati as the inheritor of the legacy of Kanshi Ram. Thank you so much for watching, and do give in your reactions.